Hey everyone, it's Aliah Henry, and you're listening to The Aliah Henry Show. Expect to hear insightful interviews and panel discussions covering community, entrepreneurship, health, and women's empowerment. Don't miss out. Keep listening. The Aliah Henry Show is up next. There's something to be said about those who take a great leap of faith into entrepreneurship. They're simply courageous. And in this episode, I'm joined by one of those courageous souls, fellow Girl Boss Christy Drenner, CPA. She is an outsourcing CFO specializing in nonprofit and religious organizations. The SMU alum started her firm in November 2017 and is here with me to talk shop about what it's been like so far working for herself. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned in to the Aliah Henry Show. Christy, thank you so much for joining me today. It is a pleasure to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Aliah.
It's so wonderful to meet friends through other connections, and obviously we met through our nonprofit connections, and it is a pleasure to have you here to talk about your journey in entrepreneurship. So I want to jump right in.
All right.
Share with us what led you to start your firm?
Well, I am blessed to be married to a United Methodist minister, and if you don't know much about our church, we serve at the pleasure of the bishop and the cabinet. So we have had our stops on the hit parade, but through that, I have spent over 20 years working with nonprofits and religious organizations, and this most recent move took us a little further north than I was anticipating, so it gave me the opportunity to go out on my own, start a business, working with those organizations, kind of helping them be their best stewards of their resources.
And it's interesting when you talk about being up north, and I have had an opportunity to visit you up there,
Yes.
And it's such a quaint town, obviously. But I think that in towns like that, where there are agencies and resources as well to the community, it is very different to get as many of those resources as you might see in Dallas or Fort Worth. And so certainly companies such as yours are really important, and they're viable to those nonprofits and organizations in the smaller area counties.
Right. Well, and the interesting thing about nonprofits and religious organizations, obviously as you are a larger group, you have more complex issues, but what's unique about nonprofits is, it doesn't matter if you have 10 donors or 10,000 donors, you still have to make sure that the funds are tracked accurately, that you keep in touch with the donors so that you can continue to solicit new gifts. And so having a firm foundation of how you handle that is so important regardless of the size of the organization.
Talk a little bit about some of your projects that you are doing with nonprofit organizations.
Sure. So we've worked with small organizations that are about $500,000 in annual revenue to ones that are almost $9-10 million. And so obviously those are very different projects. But what we find is that there's good people at these organizations that want to do their best work, and then sometimes they need additional tools of training or people or technology. And so we live in a very interesting space where we don't do audit or tax. We are really there to partner with the organization, either as an outsourced CFO or as an interim person if they've had a transition in their staff. Okay. We look at all the different ways they handle their accounting and their donor management, make sure they're doing it the best way they can so that it can be most efficient with their time and their resources.
So share how you are getting those referrals for the work.
So it's been pretty much word of mouth.
Okay.
I am lucky to be, again, married to a United Methodist minister, so I've met a few ministers along the way. So about half of our clients have been in our denomination, but the other half have been through connections that I made through my time at SMU as a student, and then through other nonprofit organizations in the area. So being a part of the community is always a great way to make connections.
Yeah, I think just in my experience, I think it's so important to get to know different people from different walks, whether it's small businesses, large businesses, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, because you never know who needs assistance. But then also people, once they get to know exactly what you do, what your firm does, it's a lot easier to make that warm connection versus that cold call, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And, as you know, the nonprofit environment has changed dramatically, even over the last decade. There are so many more nonprofits than there used to be, so many more people are serving on those boards where you can make the connections to the small business owner and whatnot, and be able to build business that way.
So as an entrepreneur, everything isn't rosy, I'm sure. As I know, I have also seen as well. Talk about some of your challenges that you've seen within these last few years of your business.
Well, my business just celebrated its second year, so we are still.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I would say I have been really fortunate to have a great coach kind of lead me on this journey, and I was lucky to find him a couple months into the process. But I think what has been the struggle is mindset, really, right? When you're your own shop, you're making all the decisions, you're trying to make sure you're doing it right, and not having a partner or a mentor next to you to say, oh, do this, do that, and kind of bounce ideas on can be a little bit challenging. And we get caught in this mindset of, oh, I don't know if I'm doing this. Am I doing this right? Can I do this? And just remembering, yes, you can, be bold in what you're doing.
I think it's so interesting. I deal with that as well. Sometimes, we're so used to, if you work in an office and there's 20 people in the office, that day-to-day interaction, going to the coffee maker to make coffee, talking shop for a little bit and then going back. It is different, when you're at home, especially if you work from home or you work remotely in a very quiet location, or maybe where there's a location where there's not as much movement. And so sometimes that is challenging as well. But then also just the day-to-day conversation. I find myself easily talking to the dog
right.
and praying that he just doesn't miraculously start to answer me.
Right.
And so it's interesting. So I think it's good, I think, for me to know that, you as an entrepreneur too do have some of those same challenges. Because I think sometimes too, I often think about some of the things that I have gone through, and I always wonder, is someone else doing the same thing, or someone else going through the same thing? And so certainly, it's okay. And I agree with you about, you just have to kind of stand bold in what you're doing and continue. And sometimes it's very tough to do that. You mentioned that you had a coach. I actually have a coach, started with a coach a couple of years ago. Talk about your coach experience, because I think some people don't tend to see that as, they look at it as, oh, wow, that's really great to have. For me, it's such a great investment.
Absolutely. My practice would be dramatically different had I not engaged with this coach. I mean, it has been that transformative. And it's not about, the tools of how to do accounting or how to keep spreadsheets or what software is out there. It's really about building the life that I want, building the practice that I want, finding the clients that I want to serve, and the most direct and best way to get there. And so having that person that is basically your cheerleader to say you stumbled here, how could you have done that better? Or, you have a plan of action for this next meeting. Let's talk about that. Let's see how that's going to work best. And, in any business, you're going to get to a point where there's the step that you take to get to the next step. And so that person helps you see, okay, you're at that moment now where you need to make a change so that you can rise higher. And, sometimes we get so stuck in the day-to-day, we can't see the big picture, and the coach really helps you see the big picture.
Yeah, I would say, in my experience, I think for me, I have enjoyed having that coach to go back and say, this is where I am, and I've been working on this for the last month. but I'm really seeing that I think I need to pivot. And really having that person that can either say, maybe you should try XYZ before you try to pivot, or give you some other options, you know, as you are thinking of pivoting into some areas. Because I do think you have to be able to see that sometimes you do have to be really agile in this business. Absolutely. Because so many things change quite a bit. And just like you said, you could get really comfortable easy. And because it becomes almost like process driven. I'm very process driven. I don't know about you.
Yes.
I write things down. I tend to kind of panic if I'm off schedule because I'm trying to really stay on schedule. But I think too, in my journey, I have seen that it's been okay. Like, it's okay if you get off schedule sometimes. So I definitely understand just having that coach and for you to be able to bounce those ideas off of and really have that confidential person that's really cheering you on. So that's great to hear. I love to hear when other entrepreneurs really look at different investments where, as some people would think, oh no, I could never do that because it's too much. And sometimes it's not much if it costs you in your business.
Absolutely. And, you know, we keep talking about the gig economy. That's what a lot of us do as we start as entrepreneurs. You don't have a brick and mortar. And in my case, I don't have a tangible asset I'm trying to sell. So the investment in a coach is completely worth it when you look at the grand scheme of what my overhead is.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. Good to know. So share with us a couple of lessons that you have encountered within this entrepreneurship journey.
Sure. So one, again, going back to the coaches, you know, just having an open mind when I go into a situation and really not worrying about what the client's response is going to be or what they can afford or can't afford, but just being open to, this is the best I can do for you and this is how I want to serve you. So just being mindful of that I don't have to make the no decision or the yes decision for the client. I can be open to whatever happens.
That's good.
And the other thing that I've really learned too is that if everything I do is at the heart of serving the client well and serving my business well and serving the family well, which sounds like you can't do all those three things at once, but if you're mindful about how you build your practice, then you can do that in any business that you have. So instead of, you know, I'm a person that worries a lot about what other people think, or they're going to think I'm, you know, doing my best or helping them as much as I can. If I just let all that go and think I'm here to serve you and this is how I think I can serve you best, then it works so much better than trying to overthink everything, with as an A-type person I can be prone to.
That's good. That's really good. What advice would you share with someone who was interested in starting a firm similar to yours, or just really starting their business?
Well, my dad was a serial entrepreneur, and he was a firm believer in you already have a network of people that you can tap into. So make connections, see where it makes the most sense. So I'd say if somebody's interested in doing something like this, find other people that are doing it in the space. Talk to people that you want to serve. What are their needs? What do they look like? Is that something that you think that you can accomplish for them or create for them if you have a product that you're trying to put into the market? So I would say really it's just about understanding what the marketplace looks like and what you have to offer before you just go jumping with both feet. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to go work for myself. It'll be great. I'll get to sit in front of the computer in my pajamas. It's going to be the best life ever. But it is hard work, as you know, to be on your own. And, you know, so I would say really think about, why is it that you want to do the shift? Are you going to be emboldened to do something you can't do in your current environment? Yeah.
It's interesting you talk about that. I remember when I first started a radio show, the show had been on for 3 years. And when I decided to pivot to the podcast, it was like, oh, wow. Can't believe, you know, people would say, I can't believe you're going to just jump out there and do that. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not really jumping out there. Like I've done it. I've done it for a little while, but I'm shifting. and trying to look at evolving what I was already doing. And so sometimes you also start in one place doing, trying out a business, trying out a project or a product, and then you see how it can evolve after time. And so sometimes just even really being mindful about those opportunities and being able to see them clearly,
right?
To see what's that next level look like, or what's the market doing right now. I mean, 3 years ago, everyone was talking about internet radio, and then all of a sudden, next thing I knew, everyone's talking about a podcast, and so you also kind of want to stay current as well. But I just kind of got excited about just seeing a change and something new, and then taking what I was already doing to the next level. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Good. So you talk a little bit about your husband. Talk about what that support and your family support looks like, because when you have a business, certainly you're already out there on your own, but you truly need a network of support of people that are around you. Talk about how your husband has supported you in the journey.
Well, I've been very grateful. I wish everyone had a Frank Drenner or a Franny Drenner or whatever it is, but he has been invaluable. I went back to school several years ago to get my master's in accounting and worked full time, and he had always been my partner in everything, but he really had to take up the slack when mom wasn't around so much with our 3 boys. But he's always been my best encourager and friend and advisor. And so, even if you don't have that person living in your house, find those people, someone in your church, in your community. I was blessed to have several women that are consultants of their own in the accounting space who I spoke with as I was starting this, who encouraged me, who kind of helped show the path to me. So, it's been vital to be able to have that kind of support to make this keep going.
That's good. That's good. And I think it's important. Sometimes I'll hear people say, well, I'm not really sure who to talk to, or I'm not really sure who to ask in that, or if they would even be interested. And sometimes you do hear no's.
Oh, sure.
Sometimes people are like, I don't know if I want that person encroaching in my space.
Right.
Or maybe they just don't have the time. But then you get a couple of yeses, and people really are okay about allowing you into their space to see what they're doing. I actually remember, now that we're talking about that, that I actually shadowed 3 people in the radio room before I was even on the mic. So again, sometimes you just have to ask. And actually I got a lot of, I don't want to say I got a lot of no's. I got like a lot of no answer backs.
Right.
Have you ever had that? Like you send this really great crafted email to say, hey, I'd really enjoy like shadowing or talking to you for like 7 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
And then you get ghosted.
Yeah,
it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, if you're starting an entrepreneurial journey, is you have to have that mindset of abundance, not scarcity. Like there's plenty of clients for everyone. There's plenty of opportunity for everyone. There's plenty of people that will be willing to mentor you, but some days it feels like there's only one client and one person that can help me, and I can't reach that person. So, those are the tough days when you have to just remember, no, there's a lot out there.
I agree. I feel that way too. I can probably give you a lot of stories. We could have a whole bunch of podcasts, about those things. But I do think, for me, I've stayed very confident, even when I was hearing lots of no's, and I just kept trying, just kept pressing forward. Or I would, I always had a journal, got a million of them. But I always have something to write in, because, I'm one of those, like sometimes in the middle of the night, I will wake up and I've got like this idea, but I got to put it down and I got to write for a little bit. And I might be up for 10 minutes or I might be up for another hour. But, I've always been in that mindset of writing things down and just continuing to just press forward no matter what, no matter how rough the day is. And sometimes it's hard to do, sometimes you just have those days where you just want to crawl back up underneath the covers and
Right.
say tomorrow.
Right.
Let's just
And
try
that's
tomorrow.
And that's okay. I mean, some days you just have to do that, and
Yeah.
then you're more powerful for the next day.
Yeah.
So being kind to yourself in those days when you just need a breath is also really important too.
Yeah. So what do your kids think about you? And, mom's got her own business, but she's also, got a lot of flexibility too. How are they feeling as you've started the business as well?
They're very encouraging as well. I mean, they see that I am able to be around more. Previously when we were living in the Metroplex, I would commute about an hour every day both ways.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot. And, I always made time for things, but it was just different. So they're definitely glad that I'm around more. And, sometimes they help with projects, put their suit jackets on and get paid a few bucks an hour to staple things or shred things. So they're excited about that. But I think it's great because they get to see that there are different ways that people work, and I kind of teach them along the way as I go as well. So
and it's interesting and then I will say in this next generation, so many things are different. Technology is different from when we were coming up, and certainly their opportunities are so much different, and their opportunities to learn and learn new things are happening a lot faster and earlier than we really we're starting. I remember showing my son the first computer, the very first computer, and he was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "It's a computer," and he was like, "It is?" I mean, it's just so it's very interesting because everything is different, and especially it's starting with technology and their awareness on what they can do is different. I remember going to college, and my grandmother said, "Do you want to be a nurse or do you want to be a teacher?" And I was thinking to myself, well, I don't want to really do either. But and that's what was happening. I mean, that was the mindset. And you talked about mindset a little bit earlier. Sometimes the people around you really, and that's what my grandmother knew, educated, the women were educators or nurses. And so that's kind of interesting as well. But I do think this generation has so many more opportunities to see a different type of job skills, occupations, whether you go to school first or you go and do something else and go back. I mean, certainly I was a non-traditional student as well, going back to graduate school just a couple years ago as well. So, certainly, and I also remember seeing the kids saying, "Your mom's in school?"
Right.
Like, yeah, she's back in school.
Well,
so, yeah.
Yeah, we were at the SMU bookstore when I was a graduate student about 5 or 6 years ago, and my youngest son was probably 6 or 7 at the time, and he goes, "Mom, you should get that sticker for your car. It says SMU Mom." And I was like, no, we're not there yet. But in his mind, I was at SMU and I'm a mom.
And your mom.
So it made perfect sense to him.
Yes.
Yeah, but he's they're budding entrepreneurs themselves. We were at lunch the other day, and the restaurant was advertising that they would, put businesses up. And he's like, "Mom, you got to get DrennerAccounting.com out there." And I was like, maybe not at the Mexican food joint, but good idea.
Very cool. See, he's thinking early.
He's thinking about
He's thinking early. My son also did an internship with our company last summer, and it was a really good experience for him. And now he's already hitting me up like, "So am I going to be able to get some hours in before the Christmas holidays?" Because there's like a couple things that I want. It's just like kind of funny to hear him talk about that. But I'm enjoying it because just like you, I mean, we want to be able to leave that legacy for our children.
Oh, yeah.
And we also want them to know that they can do and be whatever it is they dream to be.
Right. Yeah. Well, my dad was a firm believer in that. So teaching them I got to go to board meetings when I could carry my own diaper bag. From a young age, I was ready for this. So I'm hoping to teach that to the boys too, how to write an email, how to shake a hand, how to introduce yourself,
They're such important skill sets to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some self-care, because I think, and I've read this article in the People magazine recently, and they were talking about self-care regimens for women, and there are like a lot of things that I enjoy doing but I also sometimes feel guilty, like about taking that time for myself to do stuff. Are there some self-care regimens that you love, or it's just some things that you just enjoy doing on your own just to kick back?
Well, I've been trying really hard because I'm usually pretty terrible at it. I used to love to read, and I would make all kinds of time to read. So I've been really intentional the last few months of actually having a book and reading it and finishing it.
Okay.
So different fiction books, And then I really like, you might tell I'm a little bit of an extrovert, so hanging out with friends is a huge piece of self-care for me. So trying to make time a couple times a month to have coffee or lunch with friends and just being intentional about that really feeds my soul. And I remember someone saying once that, we have this vessel that we pour out for other people all day long, but if you don't have the items to fill it up, there's nothing for you to pour out and you're just empty. So trying to refill it so that I can serve others is important too. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a couple of apps that I was looking at that just kind of talks about, making sure that you can, add it to the calendar, right? And so one of my goals upcoming is to make sure that I add in that time. Because sometimes you think like, yes, I'm going to do it. And often I'll be like, oh, I'm just too busy. I've just got something else going on. But you really have to you got to add it in just like you would add in anything else. And so certainly there's some years that I feel like I'm really, really good. And then there's some years that I'm just like, wait a minute. Have I had any time? Have I seen this person lately? Mm-hmm. And so yeah, definitely those seasons. And certainly with you, and just in the second year of the business, a lot of that is like you're pouring into the business to try to get it up and running, and getting it to a place and a space that seems, able to really work it. Simply, I know you talked also within your business, you have subs that are in your business. But same thing, do you guys do things as a team?
We haven't as of yet.
Okay.
But that would be something certainly to grow towards.
It's interesting. I ran across another consultant in the nonprofit space, and she recently, they took their team to paint.
Oh, nice.
And they all work remotely, but it was that way that they could kind of come in for an hour, they had lunch, and then paint. And I just thought about that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's really fun. So
yeah, because you wouldn't think twice about doing it if you had a brick and mortar place, but as a remote, it's a little bit different.
Yeah,
yes,
definitely a good way to get in there and get involved, but then also kind of do something together as well. I know our team eats a lot. we hit any food place we can. There's no we're not shy about that.
Nice.
So we can always hit a food place. Because when you're on Zoom, it's great. It's good to be on Zoom, but sometimes you want to have face-to-face connection.
Oh yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I've been really intentional with clients, especially, is that we do go on site with them. We're not completely remote because there is that human connection that's so important. So
yeah, and I know even with our business too, we have two that we are on site, but then there's a couple that we hardly ever are. I don't think I've been on site but once.
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see that dynamic within some of the projects as well. Interesting. So talk a little bit about your philanthropic work. Is there something or a cause that you are passionate about?
Well, I think I'd get in trouble if I didn't say the church first, but I really do enjoy working in our church, and we are currently serving. All of our churches have been wonderful, but this one is particularly very mission-minded, and right after we got there, we adopted an elementary school in our community. Nice. And so we have been helping with different projects on site. We have volunteers that read. We give out prizes for the iStation when they the kids take tests every month. And what I love about this school is that they have such such a dynamic principal, and everything she does is about building the kids up. So instead of the iStation prize going to the kid that has the highest score, it goes to the kid that has had the most growth since the previous month.
Oh, I love that.
So any kid can be the one that wins the prize that month. So projects like that really are exciting to me. And I was the coordinator for our church for a couple of years, and then passed the baton on. But I'm really involved in the education foundation in our town as well, and so that's definitely something I'm passionate about.
Good. Very good. So what is your personal philosophy on work-life balance? I hear that a lot. I see it a lot on our LinkedIn feeds. Everybody is always saying, do you have work-life balance? Some people say yes, some people say no. What's your take on it?
I know that we like to talk about it a lot. You're right. So I would say that balance feels like something that's equal at all times. I don't think that's really possible, at least not for me. So I feel like it's more of an ebb and flow, Yeah. But this entrepreneur journey has allowed me to say, well, okay, I worked 12 hours yesterday. This is a real story on a project. But last Friday, I didn't work at all because my youngest son had a Veterans Day program, and my oldest son is a senior on the football team. So we had all kinds of events for the last Friday night lights, and in-laws were in town. So, that's not balance, but it works out well. You kind of make time for what is needed during that day or week or whatnot, and then hopefully over all of it, it's pretty equitable in how it turns out. But I think of it more of as an ebb and flow, but you have to be mindful because it is certainly easy for the work to be so much more than the life.
I think that's one of my favorite things that I enjoy about being an entrepreneur and having the capability of shaping your own time. I do enjoy that because I do find it very valuable and important to be present. And I feel like I hadn't always been present. And with this, it allows me to be able to do that and not feel as though I'm missing out, or not feel as though I'm just all in this workspace where I just am not getting up out of. So, that's interesting.
It was challenging to navigate at first because I am one that likes schedules, and I like a plan, and I like things to fit in the box. So I'm not going to lie, it's been a struggle to figure out, okay, what does that look like? And then being okay when you don't do anything on Friday and you're like, wait, I've got an hour. I could just do something. I was like, no, I'm just going to enjoy my people. So
but that's super cool that you're able to do that because,
absolutely.
There's those days where that might have been you driving that hour commute where you'd already worked possibly, maybe you did half a day, and then you've got to get home and kind of regroup, put your track shoes back on, and then go again. And so with you not having to do that, really, I think it probably puts your whole disposition in a different space.
It really does.
I know it does for me as well, when I'm thinking, gosh, I'm so glad I just got to get up and do the things that I needed to do without feeling so pulled in so many directions.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell me, is there any type of exercise or I'm asking this because I was on one of the feeds recently, and I am now seeing like everybody is into something. So there's spin. There is somebody's doing yoga, somebody's doing some hot stone thing. Do you have like a physical?
No, it's sad times.
Okay.
I am a donor to Camp Gladiator in Texoma. I am not an active participant, which I should be. So, yes.
Don't feel bad. I think I've been that donor too, like a couple of times. Like you're like, oh, it's gonna be $19.99 for like 6 months, and then you're like, yeah, it's month 7, and I haven't been there yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do feel a lot better when I go out and do it, so I need to start making time for at least walking or doing something.
Yeah.
But,
I love to walk. A couple years ago, my last 5K was in, I don't know, but it was a couple of years ago because it was in grad school. I think it was the last one I did. But I will say I enjoy walking. I feel like I like to go out and walk. I like to look at everything around me. I like to hear like the noises that are going on. I love to walk the dog. I find that I feel like I don't have as much time as I used to. So I know one of my next goal for the next year is really to kind of pull that back in, because I really, really enjoy doing that. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So much for that, right? We just got to do it when we can. So what insight would you like to leave with our audience just about entrepreneurship and leading your best life?
I would say that it's about being brave and being persistent and being intentional about what you want to do. You know, you have to have a plan, and it's not going to work. You have to pivot. You have to be agile, but putting the thought into it and just stepping bravely into it is how it works. You know, and for me, it's hard not to know what step A, B, and C are. So it's easy for me to say that, but not easy to apply it. But I think that if you remember that and find the people that can help guide you and find the processes that'll work and just keep trying, that's where it's at.
Well, that's good. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Exciting to hear about your journey. And wish you the best success.
Thank you.
As you are continuing your entrepreneurial journey. And we look forward to seeing you soon and seeing what you guys are doing.
Oh, sounds good. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for being here, Christy Drenner. And you've listened to the Aliah Henry Show. I just was about to say charity talk. I guess I'm having a senior moment. How about that? So thank you so much for listening to the Aliah Henry Show, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to the Aliah Henry Show. Remember, be bold enough to use your voice, brave enough to listen to your heart, and strong enough to live the life you've always imagined. See you next time.